I was born in New Jersey, and I grew up in Miami Beach. I traveled west. I went and I moved to Colorado, and I lived there for about a year, and then I came out here on a road trip and just knew that this was the place for me, and I ended up staying here, and I live in Echo Park. I've been here since '96. Well, first and foremost, I'm an artist model, and I've been modeling for 14 years, and that's how I make my living. I'm also a musician, and that kind of spawned out of modeling. I, grew very confident of myself and through the modeling, and I was able to, forget about that. But I guess I'm an illusionist, create illusion on a daily basis. I get paid to become, and that's what I do for a living. On any different, like each day is a different day, and I just become a different part of myself. And before I actually started modeling for money, people would sit at my lunch counter when I was a waitress and draw me, and always thought it was wonderful and beautiful. And who would come in, and he was a painter, and he asked if he could paint me, and he paid me very little, in food, and like $9 an hour. This is like way back in the day, and it was a little below, that was below what the standard rate was. I think the standard rate at that time was probably $10 to $15 an hour, and so he would paint me, and I didn't think anything of it, and then something happened in my life, and I really wanted to change my life, and so I stopped waitressing. I had a few different waitressing jobs around town, and I decided, that I was wasting my potential, and I was going to find something, inside of me where I could grow. And so a friend of mine, who's actually an actress and a director, she was modeling part-time, and she just recommended me to a couple of people and said, you should try this, because I've always had a flair for, I guess, the dramatics or whatever, and I've always had kind of an arsenal of costuming in my closet, and so I tried it, and it was like a light bulb that went off, and I couldn't believe that I hadn't been doing it all these years. And so you kind of get a sense for something, and you realize, what, I could be good at this. And that's what I felt. There were many models at that time, but there was only a handful that considered themselves artist models. Sarah Streeter being one of them. It's like when people ask you what you do, people would always say what the other thing that they did, like acting or this or that. And so I always admired that about Sarah, because that's who she was. She owned what she was doing and said, this is what I'm doing. And I took her as an example, as far as what makes a good model is somebody who works hard. It's like a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, when you're pouring your soul out, even though it seems like you're doing nothing but sitting there. People can tell the difference. But she was always an example of how to be. When I first came on the scene, so to speak, everybody would just embrace you. Like, all of the artists would be like, oh, a new model. It was so rare to come by, because at that time, not everybody was doing this. This was something that was more, it was still hidden. From time to time, artists will ask me, and I know they've asked other models as well, like, what goes on, like, in your brain? What are you thinking about? And the dialogue, the inner dialogue is different every moment. I'm personally, I'm grateful to have an inner dialogue with myself, because I know that some models just cannot be still with themselves in those moments, and they're, it's too much, they're bored or they're angsty. And for me, my dialogue, whatever that is for me to know and for the artist to interpret. And anything that I'm giving them, hopefully they can interpret it into something useful for themselves. To be a good model, you need to understand that it's not always about you, even though, yes, you're the subject. You're there. You have to, in a sense, become invisible. There's this thing, people are looking at you the whole time, they see you, but you can't be so, it's like, we're, outgoing, right? You have to, if you're being there, especially if you're nude, you have to feel comfortable in your skin, and there's like it's an illusion to give off this comfort of being naked. Yes, some people are comfortable being naked, but what you have to do, and this is for the students, like when you're dealing with classroom settings, younger artists or artists who aren't used to being around nudity, these people are working hard trying to learn a craft, you know, a skill, you know, and we can't be so in their face in these moments where they can't concentrate, and you know what I mean? Like, they need to feel at ease because it's already something that they're trying to do where they don't feel comfortable. When you're learning, you don't feel comfortable. So I think a good model can give off the illusion of wearing this beautiful costume, but it's your skin. You know what I mean? Like, you are wearing something. This is a second skin. You know, nudity is, I mean, we're not nudists. This type of modeling is completely different than other kinds of modeling. Our shelf life is much longer than, you know, a print model, and, you know, we're giving ourselves. We're not, it's like the beauty that is within, or even the ugliness that's within. You know, we're giving, that's, you know, you're talking about what's the difference between an artist model and a muse. You know, sometimes we need to be the artist model. I want to be an inspiration to everyone around me, as many people as I can, even if it's a stranger, my family, you know, my friends. I want to inspire my friends to do better and to do what they want to do, you know, to believe in themselves. And I think a muse, if we're going to use that term, you know, is somebody who helps, I can't think of that word. A muse is someone who brings out, you know, that confidence in the person, you know, who's trying to create something. You know, it's not easy to create and then to put it out to the world. You know, it takes a lot of chutzpah. Especially if you've been doing it a long time, you know these people, you know, for so long, and you've seen them grow and they've seen you grow, and, you know, we've grown old together, whatever. And so when I'm walking around, first and foremost, I'm walking around to say hello to my friends. And then, you know, sometimes I'll hold back from that because there is a certain amount of narcissistic tendencies when it comes to being a model. I mean, let's be realistic here. You know, people are looking at us, they're telling us how beautiful we are, and I mean, they do that with all the models, especially if you're a new model. You know, they'll tell you that you're their favorite, you know, which for the moment is probably true, and for some of them it is true, you know, but you can't take a lot of stock in that, because there's always going to be somebody else coming along and they're going to love them too. And so, you know, you just take it with a grain of salt. You know, it's like you can't let the ego be so inflated. And that's another thing. It's like when you're a new model, you know, unless you're a little older and you've got some substance to yourself, you're going to get carried away with that, and you're just going to think you are the end all be all, you know. And it's like you have to be gracious. Sorry. Robert Vargas is a great downtown artist that I've worked with over the years. He's amazing. He's a portrait artist and really just knows how to capture the soul of every person he comes across. And he actually, if you're going to talk about muse, now this artist finds the muse in everyday people. So he's looking for the soul, you know. He's drawing people who are living on the street, or anyone who'll sit for him, which is everybody. Everybody wants to sit for him because he's amazing. And the experience with him is really great because he connects with his model, whoever that may be in that moment, you know, just right here. And he's got his eyes piercing through you the whole time, and it creates this thing, like, which I've had with other artists as well. Like, you really know you're onto something when, I mean, for me, I call it the spidey, and you know, that spidey tingle, where all of a sudden I get this tingle that goes up to my scalp, and I'm like, I'm doing something right now, like I'm creating something, and it's like this beautiful moment, and you know, your eyes start to water up, like they're watering up right now just talking about it. And it's I mean, it's hard to describe, which I think I did a pretty good job just not describing it, but there's nothing like it until you felt it, and you don't know that you're feeling that because you think it's just a normal thing, but once you felt it more than once, you realize this is the energy that's flowing between the artist and the model, and that's always a great moment. She's mythical to a lot of people, so she is the myth, the mystery. You know, when I very first started modeling, I mean, a lot of people that I worked with would tell me about Jennifer, and she was the favorite model, blah blah blah. I mean, you know, she was really great. Like when she was younger, she first came on the scene and she was like 18, and nobody had seen anything like her, because she kind of started that change a little bit, where the models were cute and they had costumes that were really amazing, you know what I mean? She was also a magician's assistant at the time, so she had all this flair. It was like pulling magic. Like, I mean, it was extraordinary how these themes would come to life. I can't even verbalize that, okay? Because it just was really a magical time. It was lightning in a bottle. I mean, you want to talk about emoting an emotion. We would do it every week. We brought whatever it was that we were telling these people, you know, and the artists never knew what the theme was going to be, and we would just do our thing, you know what I mean? It was amazing, you know. And then at the end of the night, we'd kind of like, and I forgot about this, but we'd be like, okay, what was the, you know, we'd ask a few of them, like, do you know what the theme was, so to speak, and, you know, people would try and guess. But you just get addicted, you know, because you're like, you want to be, I mean, the atmosphere is amazing. You know, we recreated something that hadn't been, I mean, that everybody was dying for. We were all dying inside, missing our people and wanting to be a part of something. And that's what this became. You know, it was just undescribable. You had to be there, you know. A lot of these women, the temperament was so fragile, you know, and it's an artistic temperament, you know, which is very fragile. So I think what brought Jennifer and I together was we're very similar in a lot of ways. We're like all business in a sense, you know, whereas the other girls are all art, you know, and it's like, I have an artistic side to me as well, but there's a practical side to me that I bring to everything that I do, and Jennifer's the same way. She's very artistic, but very business-minded and practical, and I think that's kind of what started attracting us together. And something happened where all of a sudden, Jennifer came up with this name for the group. Okay, and it was the Gallery Girls, and you know, it was coming a time where, okay, like, what are we doing? You know, are we just going to give this away for free all the time? You know, because we were creating some amazing events, and you know, the people really wanted to pay for that, and they were giving us money, you know, and nobody, for whatever reason, that artistic temperament, you know, on some of the group, you know, people did not want to touch that money. They didn't want to be greedy, so to speak, you know, and I don't think it's greed to be, you know, I think there's an exchange that happens, and you need to have that, you know what I mean? Like, it's not going to be completely what you're worth, but if somebody wants, my grandmother told me, if somebody wants to offer you money, you take it. You don't turn that down. This is what they can give you. You know, you're giving them something, this is what they want to give you in return. So things started getting a little strange, and I remember there was a point when I myself was feeling really negatively towards the whole situation as far as Gallery Girls, and what Jennifer was trying to do. You know, she was gonna start making a business out of this. And what was so beautiful about what we were doing was it was so pure, and it wasn't a business. It was, you know, it was art, or whatever you want to say. We were supporting the artists, you know, it was a gift, you know, it was just a good time, it was a party. And, but what started happening was, you know, of course we attracted we'll talk about, I mean, there were men in the group as well, but we'll talk about women. So I guess we started getting a lot of attention as a group, and, you know, Jennifer being business-minded, you know, I'm not going to say she wanted to capitalize on this, but, you know, people were coming to her, you know, wanting to put together, you know, for their events, wanting to have us as a group at their events, because, I mean, we were amazing. You know, our personalities all just kind of flowed with each other. We had something that was magic, and people wanted that in their, you know, and they wanted to pay for that. So, you know, Jennifer coined it as, you know, Gallery Girls, because it was gallery openings. Like, people would have us at their gallery openings, you know, walking around and being live art and being a part of what was going on, you know, and creating a wonderful event for these people, you know, just adding to it. And I know, I mean, on my part, just to be honest, like, in those times, I feel that, you know, okay, there was a few people who kind of would come around, you know, and latch on to what we were doing, as far as, I mean, other, you know, women or models, so to speak, people who wanted to be models, who weren't. And, you know, those people started, I guess, I mean, it could have been anyone, and it wasn't anyone specific, but, you know, Jennifer would, you know, get all these really great gigs, and these people were getting these gigs, and I wasn't at this time. And I was kind of, I mean, I felt slighted at this time, and because I was so responsible. I mean, I could be counted on. I had amazing costumes. I had a great attitude. I was there. You know what I mean? You could count on me. And I think, I mean, it's one thing to be, you know, fabulous and all this stuff, but if you don't show up on time and all that, I mean, you know what I mean? Like, I don't think that kind of, at the time, I was feeling a little bit resentful that I wasn't getting these gigs that were being paid. Right? Because all of a sudden now we were getting paid to do these special party gigs, in a sense. And so Jennifer and I, how we became close, the reason I'm telling you this is because, I mean, there was a lot of strife going on within the group at that time. You know, people were confused and afraid of change, you know, and also afraid of the light being shined on what we were doing. That was such an underground thing at the time, you know. I mean, to use the word underground, it's kind of whatever, but that's what it was. You know, people, you had to be invited. You know, there was no advertising on the internet for this, you know what I mean? This was word of mouth, and it grew from word of mouth. And so once Jennifer started getting these gigs for everyone, you know, these group gigs, you know, these people who just come on the scene, like all of a sudden getting these gigs, so I was really hurt by that. So me being the way that I am, and I go back again, you know, there was a lot of strife going on because of this money. That people were thinking that, I mean, ridiculous stuff like that Jennifer was keeping money from the group and that she was stealing, which is totally untrue. And, you know, because we were collecting money from these workshops and nobody wanted to touch the money. So Jennifer just put it in a bank account and we started building up money this way, and we would take group trips together. Anyway, so people were starting to talk about Jennifer and feeling very negative about what she was trying to do. And not just the models, but, you know, teacher, like just a lot of people in the industry, you know, who had been around for a long time, bookers, you know, everybody were starting to feel like she was exploiting what we were doing. And I remember, you know, nobody would go to her. I heard an earful from plenty of people, and I'd be like, well, say something, or, you know, discuss it. And she wanted to discuss these things with everyone. But you know what? There comes a time when if you have an idea and you want to execute it and you believe in what you're doing, you need to do it regardless of what other people think, you know? And that's what Jennifer did. She just kept going. And what brought us closer together, I keep going around that circle, was I just went to her when I was really upset about this. Like, there was a time when I said to myself, okay, you know what? I'm out of this. Because, I mean, it was this whole sexy thing that was bothering me, because all of a sudden it became about sexy, right? And we had to be sexy all the time. It was always sexy, sexy, sexy. And I love sexy, you know, but I mean, maybe I was, and at the time I was a little larger. I was more full-figured, and, you know, the other girls were so much skinnier, and those were the girls who were getting all these gigs. And I'm like, why are these girls getting the gigs? So I started feeling like this wasn't for me, and I told Jennifer, I said, you know what? I'm out. I don't want to be a part of this, because I feel slighted. You know, I've been around just as long as anybody else, and more so than some of these people who are getting these, you know, high-paying gigs where, I mean, you got to pay your dues, in a sense, to get that type of thing, you know? And I don't feel that they paid their dues, and nothing against them at all, because it could have been any of them. It didn't matter who it was. It was nothing personal, and I didn't take it personally either. I just felt slighted, and I felt like, okay, this isn't good for me, and I don't feel good about it. And so I told her. I said, I don't feel good. And she said, you know what? Maybe I'm just not, you know, she acknowledged what I said to her and said, you know, well, maybe I need to start getting you some more. And I'm like, yeah. Well, and at first, actually, I said, no. I think you should just go with what you're doing. And if that doesn't include me, then it doesn't include me. But I don't want, like, I don't want our friendship, which was building over the years at this time, I don't want to end up not liking you because of this. So I'm just going to step out business-wise, and I just want us to be friends. But then she started realizing that that was what she was doing wasn't right, or whatever she realized, she acknowledged to me, and then it all changed from there. And, when she can, which is a lot of time, I mean, she offers me a lot of work that I have to turn down, but she's gotten me in on some of the bigger high-paying gigs, and, that I wouldn't have had otherwise, had I not said something to her also, and had she not thought that I was good for something, but now we have both, the best of both worlds. She's one of my closest friends, and we're confidants, and we're also we're not business partners, because this is her business. And I've told her over the years, in the beginning, I said, look, anything you need from me, I'm here to help support your vision and your dream, because this was her dream, to create this and keep it going and build upon what we had already started. Because Sarah had stepped out, and she didn't want to, she felt whatever she felt, and I can't speak for her. I mean, I know in my mind, I have my ideas of what she felt, and I'm not gonna try and coin that for her. But Jennifer's not trying to step in where Sarah left off, and she's not trying to be anyone else. What she's doing is giving the community what it wanted. The artists, they want these workshops. I mean, we have other people who are, angry with her for starting workshops. They feel like they're taking away artists from their workshop. But they have to understand that there are so many workshops all over town. It's not just Jennifer, and she tries to really be good about that, not watering down the whole system with too many of this and that, but I don't know, I got off a tangent. So a lot of times, people ask me questions because, we know that artists are kind of sick in the head. There's some sort of craziness going on. And, people, there's this whole, especially because you're living in Hollywood, people are afraid, especially when models first start, you're a little, intimidated. You don't realize, you're going to some place you've never been before, which is every place, okay, that you've ever go. At one point, you have never been there. And some situations, seem a little shady, but for the most part, I gotta say, never had a problem, and no shadiness going on, even though the place looks dilapidated, you're walking into a strange warehouse, it's dirty, blah, 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 but, the person is there, it's legit, right? But when you're first starting, I mean, and this didn't happen to me, thank God this didn't happen to me when I first started modeling, because I would have been like, what? Because I get calls all the time from younger models or newer models, and they're like, oh, I feel, they don't realize, they think for whatever reason you're a little more uptight when you first start, because you're trying to act like you know what you're doing, and you don't want people taking advantage of you. And if anyone, God forbid, any other model says to you, don't let someone take advantage of you, I mean, you're gonna keep that in your mind, because you're getting advice. Like in the beginning, you're getting advice from certain models, or, some people ask for, I never really asked for advice, but sometimes you'll get advice, and that, you kind of heed that advice. It's stuck in your mind. So you're thinking, oh my God, I'm going to run into some crazy sexual encounter or whatever, right? So I've had about, I think in the whole 14 years that I've been modeling, I've had like 2 experiences where it was a little crossing the line, from the artist to the model. And the first one, I mean, I guess, should I tell you both? The first one, I'll tell you the first one, which was not the original one, but now that I'm thinking of it, it was for a private painting that I was doing, and I would meet with this artist every week, and it was like a regular thing. And he was a really lovely gentleman most of the time, and we would eat breakfast together, and we're talking while we're working, and everything was lovely. One time we're sitting there, and he leans over and starts to try and kiss me, and I had just told him something that was very personal to me, and for whatever reason, he saw that as weakness and a vulnerability, and he leaned in. And he was an older gentleman. I mean, I call him a gentleman. He's a nice guy, but I think he was lonely at the time, and he was having a drinking problem. But he leaned in and like forced a kiss upon me, on my mouth, like open mouth. And I was just like, you know, that's not cool. You know, it made me feel really awkward, and I kind of started to cry a little bit because I had just finished telling him this really deep thing that had happened to me, and I was very vulnerable. And when he did that, I just felt like, oh my God. And then it was at the end of our session anyway, and so I get up to leave, and he goes to pay me, and he like gypped me also. On top of that, he gyps me and doesn't pay me the rate that he had already agreed to. And we leave, you know, whatever. And then I remember I was talking with some other models, because this is the thing. You can't do something like that without models starting to talk. I mean, we talk. When something bad happens, you know, whether we, like, see, today there's a forum. You know, we have online forums where people are spewing negativities about artists and places, and I don't do that. I kind of sustained from that, and I'm not on any online groups because I just don't, I don't agree with that. You know, I feel it's important to talk to the person. You have a problem with somebody, or if somebody gyps you or whatever it is, you know, a school doesn't pay, you should talk to them. So anyway, I did go to another model that I knew worked for him, but this was very private between us, and I told her what happened, and you know, she was like, you know, wow, that's inappropriate, you know. And I think he had tried some stuff with her before too, but he was older, so that's not as scandalous. Well, here's another artist. Okay, this guy was older too, and it's funny because a model friend of mine years ago, we were all swapping stories, and she tells me the story about an artist who, you know, she's working for, and he has her in this reclining pose, and she falls asleep while she's posing. She falls asleep, and she wakes up, and the guy is, oh, how should I say it? Should I just come out? He's eating her out. Should I try and say something else? Okay, so, and he's old, okay? This guy was old at the time. Anyway, so he's eating her out, and I'm like, how do you fall asleep and not realize that somebody's, you know, doing this? And she's like, I was asleep, you know, whatever. She wakes up, and she's like, oh my God. So she tells me the story about him. I forget all about the story. And years later, I'm working for this guy, and he's got an interesting name, and he's really old, and he, you know, was working out of this like office space, and he smoked like crazy. And I'm a smoker. The guy smoked like a chimney, and we were in a very small space, and it was super intense. And at one point he says to me, if you want to like just lay back and fall asleep, feel free, right? So I'm like, okay, I'm fine the way I am, right? You know, and I'm like posing, and all of a sudden the name comes to me, and I'm not gonna say it because that's rude, but I realize I'm sitting in the place where my friend was sitting years ago, and you know, it's the guy, and I know it's the guy. And I'm like, oh my God, this guy, whatever. Well, I'm posing for him, and at one point, and this guy also, another sad soul. Like, I mean, he was a drinker. It was very clear that he was an alcoholic. Older. The guy is smoking like crazy, and it's really starting to get to me, and all the thoughts are inside of me, and I'm thinking, Well, when I first started modeling, I just thought of this. I was dating an artist who was younger than I was, and I had just been modeling like 4 months, and I didn't really know if it was appropriate or not. And of course you hear all the stories, the artist muse relationship, throughout time they have been lovers. And I was dating somebody for a few months, and we ended up going on a trip somewhere, and it ended up falling apart, and I didn't see him again for many years. He ended up actually calling me just recently to see how I was doing. But I quickly found that when you mix the two together, anything could happen. And I wanted to keep working. So I can honestly say that I've never crossed the threshold of that. I've certainly, had feelings for certain artists that I've worked with over the years, and vice versa. But I found that tension that comes up between us, because we've never consummated anything, is where the magic is. And I prefer to have that. Then that's more lasting than to just have an affair and be done with it. Not that there's anything wrong with that, or that I would judge any model or artist for doing that, because it does exist. It is a pretty normal thing. But for myself, I've kind of always been that way, where that philosophy of you don't shit where you eat, basically. And I want to keep working, and also just there's respect that goes along with that. It's like just respecting that time that we're having together, and use it for the work. For me, my muse is heartbreak. Recently I've had a personal muse. I mean, I am married, so and I'm pretty loyal to my husband, and but we all have our fantasies, our brain that thinks of other people. I do have my muses, yes. The muse, I mean, it's not just a person, it's definitely an emotion. And I think that beauty, for me, the thing that I get inspired by is something that's beautiful and sad in the same moment. And I try to see that in everyone and everything. And I think that, to be human is to be happy and to be sad. There isn't just one or the other. You have to have both. And that's where I find my inspiration. And also I use that for work as well, for modeling. Trying to find that beauty and, the ugliness and things, The thing I think is wonderful about what we do is that, and also being this type of model, there's something beautiful in all of the imperfections that we have. And that's life. It's not about being this perfect, airbrushed, creature. And that's something that I learned early on, like early on in my modeling career. I realized what the artist wanted. I think the first time I ever posed, my very first pose, I'm like, I want to make myself look good, right? How does my body look sexy when I'm, because initially you think, oh, I need to be fit, I need to look good. And I did that for about 5 minutes, and I realized this is impossible. I'm not going to be able to come up with all these poses that make me look glamorous, And I found very quickly that it's not about that. It's about all that extra stuff that's going on, And that's how also, through this work, I gained I built my confidence on this whole perception, of what is beauty, what is beautiful, and what beautiful is what we are. And there's nothing that's perfect that breathes, you know what I mean? Like visually, we cannot be perfect, if you want to airbrush or nip and tuck, that's fine, but that's not what this is about. This is about reality and experience, and the lines and the age and the pain and the growth, And for me, I thank God for this coming into my life, this profession, because it really taught me how to, believe in myself, and to know that I was good enough, and to know that I was beautiful. And that's what's so great about it, is we could be old. You can be 90 years old with this face, and people are gonna, love that. They're gonna be like, oh, it's so beautiful. And then, so it inspires you, and it makes you realize that, I mean, youth is fleeting. You know, we're not going to be young. I mean, we're already aging. We're dying right now. You know what I mean? And to know that there's still beauty waiting for me at the end of my life, you know, when I'm growing old and gray and I'm not in this body anymore. I'm someplace, you know, there's something else going on when everything starts to fall, which it already has begun, you know. I'm embracing it, you know, and I'm fine with it because I know that I have substance. The value of art in our society right now is immeasurable. I mean, you know, because art, I mean, it's not just a painting, you know, art is however you express yourself. And if we don't express ourselves, then we're gonna die. If I'm sitting across from an artist and we're creating something, and in that moment I feel that tingling, you know, that is what art is for. It's for those moments. But we forget, I think all of us forget on a daily basis that, you know, because we're always thinking of this end point. What will this get me? You know, I need to do this. I want to be famous. Like, people want to be famous. They want to make money, you know, fame and fortune. It's like the endless thing, you know. I mean, that's what keeps me going, is that inspiration to create something. You know, it's my soul. Like, the soul is crying for that. And I know that it's true because whenever I've given up, so to speak, within myself, and I've said, oh, I can't do this. Why am I trying to do this? So and so has done it better, and why should I try? I'm not going to succeed. You know, I mean, I'm not any better than this person. You know, like, you realize how much talent there is in the world, and how is your voice, you know, so to speak, how is your voice going to make a difference? Or, you know, how are you going to be different? You know, how are people going to start liking you? But whenever I've given up, just on my own terms, you know, when I've said, okay, forget it, I can't do this, I've always had to go back and do it because it still speaks inside of me, and that wave of inspiration keeps coming, and I live for that, you know. And I think everyone should have that experience on some level with something that they do, whether it be gardening, you know, anything. I don't know, things speak to us, you know, art speaks to the masses, and it's always been that way, and there's got to be a reason for it. So it's very important, and I don't think you can measure that importance, you know. I mean, I think it's life or death. I think that kind of happened years ago. It started before, like right now, I mean, people are definitely benefiting from what we were doing on the early days, I think, because it was more, I think that at that time when we first started getting together on these late night things on Tuesday nights, there was a cry. I mean, it was like, people were really wanting this something, you know. Our lives were, you know, we were wanting to connect and create this atmosphere, you know, that you could taste and smell. And, you know, it was organic at that point. Now, I mean, definitely there is a lot of not backlash, but I mean, now we see the vibrations from that time. Now it's more in full effect on a general basis. Like, now it's more like other people are creating that. Like, there's Dr. Sketchies, you know, there's all these groups that are coming up doing this type of thing. You know, it's like a band that comes up and says, you know, they're doing something completely different, like maybe, you know, recreating the 20s, and all of a sudden you see all these other bands coming that are sounding and looking like this original band. So I kind of feel like that's what happened before, and now I'm not going to say that they're imitators, because, you know, life imitates art, and it's also a form of flattery. And so I think when people see something that they really like, they want to create that in their lives too. So what's happened is, I think, you know, and it's also the artists too, because before, I'll tell you, the artists were very to themselves. You know, they were not coming out and socializing with each other. Now you have all these drawing groups, you know, and like what are the sketchy, the drink and draw guys. Like, I mean, these guys aren't even really using models, they're drawing each other. But, you know, there's been all these branches that have stemmed off. They're like, if these guys, and I feel The difference, I mean, visually is, you know, we have, it's not just us. It's not just the models posing for the artists. We also have live music. It's usually, you know, gypsy-inspired music, Turkish music, you know, just really beautiful, soulful music. Haha. Then we also have, you know, the dancers, the belly dancers who are dancing to the live bands, and, you know, the artists love that because they're also painting and drawing this whole scene that's going on. It's not just one-dimensional anymore, you know, it's I mean, yes, it's three-dimensional when you're there in person and you're painting and drawing a model, but now it just opens up even further, and it's just beautiful. And then we have the dancers who are posing also with us, you know, and that exposes them to that, you know, like that experience. And, you know, whereas a lot of people would never have been, I mean, and I feel bad even saying this part, but I want to be honest about it, is, you know, it's like this little baby, you know, and, you know, you get protective over things. When you have something that's so good, you want to save it for yourself. You want to be selfish. You know, and in a sense, that's what I feel we've lost a little bit, like with everything, with all the light coming upon what we're doing, you know, I feel, I don't want to say I'm jealous, you know, but in a sense, I don't want to share with, you know, people who don't have that understanding and respect about it. You know what I mean? I mean, not everyone can be completely authentic at all times. You know, it's not fair to say, oh, this model isn't good because she's new, because everyone's new at some point. We've all been new. And, you know, I mean, we've been, as a group also, we've been very open and welcoming to new people, you know, and I try to make other younger female models feel comfortable around me. You know, I mean, there are times when, yes, I'm deflecting and I don't want people around me and I don't want to be friends with all of these new models and whatnot, but I think it's because I am trying to, you know, trying to protect it, you know, because it's like so many people come and go. There was like a time, I mean, it's a little tainted, to be honest, you know, there's like, you know, and it's only because of hearsay, you know, and insecurity. I think there was a lot of, you know, and change. Nobody wants, I mean, me more than anyone, I just don't like change. And that's why, I mean, now I'm more adaptable to that. But before, you know, you just don't want things to change. You don't want people, if everyone knows about this secret place that you have where you get, you know, this secret gold, you know, and then everybody's going to know about it, and then there's going to be no more gold. So I think that's kind of what we all felt. We were trying to protect the baby, you know, and when you protect the baby too much, you strangle the baby and nobody gets to appreciate it. And if, you know, if the world has to appreciate it, and, you know, sometimes you're going to have people who are, you know, just trying to jump on the bandwagon, so to speak. And I think that's what was happening a little bit here and there. It still happens. You know, you got people who are like, oh, I can do that. Oh. And they don't even realize how much time and energy you've put into your life and what you're doing, and that this is your life. Like, this is my world. You know, and a lot of other models feel this way. But then you have these people who come in and they go, oh, that's easy. I can do that. And they'll say that right to your face. Come right up to you. I want to be a model. You know, and it's like, oh, you do? Oh, that's great. You know, and you just kind of do this, oh, wonderful, please, you know, go. And you want them to, but it's like these blanket statements of, you know, sometimes people don't realize how hurtful they are when they come up to you and they go, oh, I could do that. Oh, you know, and it's like they just want a piece of that. And it, you know, it's like you feel, you know, you've worked hard, and that's the thing. It's like, you know, you gotta, anyway, you can't keep it away from everyone, and it's fine, and, you know, it's welcoming, because that I mean, we want to continue on, you know what I mean? You can't just be the only ones doing something fabulous. Do I think there could be another Bedlam? Well, I mean, offhand I'd say no, there couldn't. But in my mind, in like my whole ideal world, if I could handpick the artists and all the players who would be there, absolutely. definitely, I mean, it was definitely a moment in time, and that's what's so beautiful about it. And if you were there, you were there and you got to experience it. If you weren't there, you get to hear about it. And then, you know, you buy into this whole myth of it all, and it was all of those things. There's no exaggeration going on. But I mean, we couldn't continue on. It's like you can't continue on off of something that somebody created. You know, you have to just continue creating something new, you know, and things have to come out of that. And it's like, I mean, if I could put all the certain people in a room, yes, we could have that, but probably not. You know, who has time for that? What does Jason Savvy bring to the whole equation? Oh my God. He is the landscape. You know, he is like, I mean, first of all, he brings us so much music that we've never heard before. You know, it's just amazing. I mean, he also gets us in that headspace. You know, without him, it'd just be like any other workshop, any other job. You know, it wouldn't be as much fun. That's for damn sure. And he, you know, I mean, he creates the air that we breathe. He is, you know, that soundscape. He creates the air. I mean, I couldn't say it any better than that. Jason, he creates the air that we're breathing. And he sets that mode, you know, that, and the mood. Larva, to me, always surprises me. As far as Larva really loves to get into her costuming. You know, she has a background in fashion design, so she, you know, will create some elaborate costumes and stuff. And, you know, she's very in tune with the artist. Like what I've noticed, like she creates a relationship. She's really good at creating some kind of, she wants to inspire them, not just artistically, but otherwise. You know, she's very, you know, spiritual. And so I know, you know, Larva brings a lot to the table when she's there. You know, she's just she's got this way about her that's hard to describe, you know. I mean, when you're modeling, we need all sizes, you know what I mean? They need really skinny models for the anatomy, and then the fuller figure. When I say fuller figure, it's like, you know, a large model, fleshy, you know. It's like very rare that the artists get to draw or paint that, and when they have that, I mean, it's so, they appreciate it so much because it's so rare that people who are larger feel comfortable because of the way society has taught us, you know. So, you know what I mean, when you're a newer artist, yeah, you kind of like, you want it, certain artists want to draw only that. They want to draw skinny females, they don't want to draw men. First and foremost, a great art model can be counted on. It's responsible, has a good work ethic, somebody who brings creativity, because you definitely need to be creative to do this type of work. Is that?
Yeah.
Poppy!
Almost done. We're almost done. We're almost there.
Shut up! Don't turn the TV on! Because he keeps it really loud. I think what makes a great art model, well, first the easy stuff, which is not the easy stuff actually, I think it's one of the hardest parts for people to really understand, is that you have to have a great work ethic, you need to be responsible, you need to show up when you say you're going to show up, you got to be on time, you also, you know, you need to be creative, you need to bring a great attitude every time, you need to bring consistency. Otherwise, I mean, we find ourselves in these situations. Sometimes we're in workshops where we're talking with the artists and there's a lot of talking going on, but for the most part, there's a lot of silence, and you need to be comfortable with the silence as well as the talking. I mean, you don't always have to talk, but when, you know, it helps, you know, it passes the time when people want to talk with you. And physically, what makes a great art model is somebody who can be, you know, somebody who feels comfortable within their own skin. Because first and foremost, you need to be comfortable as the model for the artist to feel comfortable. Because without that, it's going to be very difficult for the artist to get anything good from you if you're constantly uncomfortable. So you need to know your own body. And also, I mean, the obvious things that make a great art model is people who take wonderful poses, you know, with great dynamics, and, you know, who understand what the artists are looking for. I mean, you know, physical stamina, you know, and it's not about also being physically fit, because, you know, they need all types, you know. You can be 80 years old and your breast can be hanging to the floor, and it's gonna be amazing, because they never get to draw that. So you're amazing if you can do that, but you need to have stamina, physically able to, you know, hold poses for long periods of times, or do difficult poses, you know. I think the other thing that makes a great model is somebody who can be in the room with the artists, singular, plural, whatever, in a workshop, classroom setting. I think you need to be able to be there and also be invisible. And the most important thing is also to remember to be yourself, because people, I mean, there's no other person like you in the world, and trying to be like another model as far as posing goes, I don't think that's the way to go. I think figuring, like how I did it, how I came about figuring out what my, we'll say, style is, I just do what my body wants to do physically. You know, I say, oh, my body wants to do this, you know, and so I take on my own stance. I don't try to be like somebody else. I mean, yeah, sometimes we're going to recreate certain poses that artists want to do throughout time, you know, if they're creating a scene that's already happened, you know, a famous painting or drawing. And there are go-to poses, so to speak, the model pose, you know, with the stool and the this and the that. But for the most part, I think if you listen to your own physical nature and your own body, that's how you're going to be a great model, because you're going to bring something completely different that no one else has ever brought. People want to draw you standing straight. No, they want the body in action, you know, and that's really what it's all about. And I think to be a great model, you know, definitely you have to bring who you are, because no one has seen that, you know, and that's why people are going to hire you, because they want what you have. Well, I was just going to say, you know, there's been some strife within the community, you know, the old guard kind of stepping forth, and, you know, expressing their dislike for Jennifer and for what she's doing, what we're doing, so to speak. I feel that it comes from I don't want to say ignorant place, because these are people that I care for and respect their opinion. Everyone's entitled to how they feel about things, especially if you've been doing something a long time and, you know, things start to change. I understand, you know, nobody wants change, and I'm the first person to admit I don't want things to change either. I like to keep things just the way they are. I feel very comfortable with that. But I do know that there's been a lot of talk within the community over the years negatively about Jennifer and what she's done with the gallery girls, and I think a lot of it comes from a place of ignorance, not to disrespect any of that ignorance, because I mean, just as in human nature, we make assumptions of things. We've never even been to a workshop, and we call it something we think that it is because somebody else has said something negative about something, and those people hadn't been to any of the workshops either. So I think when people make assumptions about, you know, stuff, and they don't see it for themselves, you know, firsthand what's really going on, I don't think that's good, number one, because it's still about word of mouth. So people hear, you know, people talk, people listen. Even if you're a crazy person and people know you're crazy, if you say something negative, people are still listening to you, and it stays in their mind. And I'm very close with Jennifer. She is a good friend of mine. I have a lot of respect for Jennifer, you know, as a friend, as a model, as a fellow co-worker, you know, as a businesswoman. I'm fortunate to know where things come from with her. Like, I know where she's coming from with what she's doing. And I definitely believe that when somebody puts himself out there for all to view, and for people, you know, when you're trying to do something, you're going to be judged. So you put yourself out there in a community you've been a part of Jennifer's been modeling for 20 some odd years, you know, so people know her and have grown up with her. I think when you try to do something,
Sorry.
okay.
Start that thought.
I think that when people put themselves out there to be judged, you know, because you are, I mean, when you go public with certain things, and you need the public, you know, and people are talking about you, I mean, I think it's a very difficult thing when you're trying to do something. People are going to judge you for it, and I think a lot of times, you know, these people are not doing, and, you know, judging somebody else for, you know, I don't think it's very fair, you know, and I've heard people say things, I mean, and they've probably talked about me as well, you know, because I'm very close with Jennifer. I know a lot of people think that I do a lot of Gallery Girl events. I don't as much anymore because I'm doing some other things of my own, you know, musically and whatnot, and don't have a lot of time, but I think that God, what do I think? I keep going like that. I think, and I do think something really great. I mean, aside from it being unfair, that's the obvious. I also think that these people, a lot of the people who are judging her outwardly on an open forum, you know, the internet, I mean, you know, it's crazy, in public, you know, people are saying very negative things about her, but these are the same people I know for a fact are getting work from Jennifer, and not just with the Gallery Girls, like plenty of teachers and artists are contacting Jennifer, and other people too, like other types of work is coming out of this, not just modeling, you know. We do a lot of interesting jobs, you know, you'd be really surprised. These people are contacting Jennifer because they know that she is within the community, you know, somewhat of a leader, and, you know, I know that upsets people to hear that she's a leader. Well, you need to understand that, yeah, she's a leader because, you know what, she's spoken up for the pay. She's gotten a lot of places to raise their pay, like the animation houses, you know, she's gone to them and said, hey, you know, other people are raising their amounts, can you guys have anything in the budget? I mean, she's mentioned it to them. She's also, you know, gotten better, you know, working conditions in certain places. People go to her when they want to start a workshop, and they ask her advice of what they should do, what should we have, how should we treat the model, what should we pay the model. I mean, and I'll tell you, most of this work that she's doing for the community, she doesn't get paid for this. I mean, she is constantly finding models for places, you know, for nothing. You know, like, she's not getting paid for this. She's also finding replacements. People call her all the time because they know that she's got a huge model list. You know, she puts it out to all the models, you know, everyone, you know, hey, we've got this work, you know, whatever. And plenty of people are, you know, are benefiting from the work that she's doing, and in the same breath they're talking about her in a negative way, and I personally don't think that's right. And I know, I'll tell you something else about Jennifer. She is beyond fair, you know, as far as pay goes, and also as far as like giving people chances. Like, people have messed up. I mean, I'll be there and I'll be like, girl, you shouldn't even give that person the time of day. They've talked about you, they've done this, you know, I've tried to remind her, and she's like, I know, but they don't know any better. I mean, she is a wonderful person who's done a lot for a lot of people, and even for people who, you know, you could say would be her enemy, you know, people who've talked smack. You know, and she's done so much. I mean, she still continues to do that, and I have a lot of respect for that, you know, and that's, to me, I mean, I think she's done so much for everybody, and people would love to just knock her down, you know, and I think that's what happens. And not to, you know, oh, she's a great person, you know, but that's what happens when you have people who do great things for people. You know, people want to knock that down, and it's like, you know what, if you can't support that and respect that, then you need to step aside. You know, that's a very negative attitude and negative outlook, and I mean, people try to take things so personally, and I think a lot of that, you know, people just don't want things to change. And, you know, and I've told Jennifer all of these things, you know, I've been her, you know, I've tried to tell her what they're saying in the trenches, you know, not telling her, oh, so and so said this about you, but just to let her know, like, you know, this is what people feel. You know, you need to know that people feel this, because sometimes she's coming up against this, you know, resistance, and she doesn't understand it because people don't want to be honest. They want to talk about other people, but they don't want to tell the person what the problem is.